All right, so William Nelson, I am curious about Mishnah versus the Rambam's Mishnah Torah versus Shulchan Aruch. Where are all the different sources for halacha? It seems like it's all over the place. So ultimately, the Mishnah is a source, and I'm excluding the Braitot and works outside of the Mishnah that also contribute to it. The Mishnah is a source. And the commentaries built on the Mishnah, both Talmuds, Talmud Bavli and Talmud Yerushalmi, including the Mechilta, the Sifra, the Sifri, and the Toseftot. That is the corpus of halacha. And one must know that the commentaries from the Mishnah are not necessarily halacha. In other words, the Gemara are the Amoraim commenting on what appears in the Mishnah. The Mishnah is what we consider Torah Sheba'al Peh. There's a distinction between Mishnah and Mishnah Torah, because it's Mishnah and it's Mishneh Torah. So what the Rambam did was that he codified all the laws that appears in the Mishnah in both Talmuds and the Toseftot, the Sifra, the Sifri, the Mechilta. He went through all that literature, which is not all halacha, by the way. I would say it's more what's called Agadah. Now, what's Agadah or Midrash? So anything in rabbinic literature that is not law is considered Agadah, folklore and legend. Most people who attack the Talmud, whether it's anti-Semites or Karaites, typically pick on things that have nothing to do with Torah Sheba'al Peh. Now, Torah Sheba'al Peh is oral law. That means it must contain law. It's not folklore and legend. So what the Rambam did, he went through all these books and he extracted all the laws and he put them in one book made up of 14 volumes. And he called it Mishneh Torah. Now, why did he call it Mishneh Torah? Now, traditionally, the term Mishneh Torah is what we would call the book of Deuteronomy. Why? Because it's the repetition of the Torah, almost like the second Torah. So the understanding is that the only thing one needs to be a full Jew is the 5 books of Moses, i.e. the first Torah, and Mishneh Torah, the second Torah, Torah Sheba'al Peh. Those of us who are not big fans of mysticism gravitate to the Rambam and his works, and his codification of halakha. The reason we gravitate to the Rambam is because the Rambam existed before the Zohar came on the scene. Now, I'm of the opinion, like many, that it was written by Moshe de Leon in 1270, the Common Era. But regardless, it appeared at that time. So, some people believe that it was written by the Rashbi, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and it was only revealed in the time of Moshe de Leon, around probably 90 to 100 years after the death of the Rambam. So the Rambam's codification of Jewish law does not include Kabbalah that would appear post the Zohar. And because it didn't include it, they created another codification, which is ultimately a compilation. In other words, the Rambam codified Jewish law. Shulchan Aruch compiled Jewish law. That a compilation like Shulchan Aruch took the 3 most popular commentary/codifications of Jewish law and took the best out of 3. And that's how Rabbi Yosef Karo, which was the author of the Beit Yosef and the abridged version known as the Shulchan Aruch, created what people claim to go by nowadays. Now, the reason people put the Rambam aside, and mind you, Shulchan Aruch is really around 90% Rambam anyways, is because the Shulchan Aruch does paskin according to the Zohar. And he even writes, I believe in his Hagdama to Shulchan Aruch, that one's allowed to paskin by the Zohar, i.e. would decide Jewish law according to the mystical work known as the Zohar, as long as it doesn't contradict Talmud Bavli. And this is ultimately what people wanted. And there's later compilations, like the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. Now, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch has nothing to do with the regular Shulchan Aruch. In there, he's got the Tanya. He has a lot of different rulings, but people keep on adding and adding more mystical practices into halakha. They keep on labeling it code of Jewish law. So this is why nowadays you have people putting their shoes on in a certain order and tie, and doing stuff like that because it happens to appear in Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. And they're like, oh, well, it says Shulchan Aruch on it. And now there's another Shulchan Aruch. There's this Sharei Halakha, when the Rambam, till today, has been the only one to ever codify all of Jewish law. Only the Rambam. Why? Because, Shulchan Aruch only dealt with things you do on a daily basis. It didn't cover everything. So this is why things like Mashiach and stuff like that, people always go to the Rambam, or things that have to do with Kodshim, things like dealing with sacrifices and Truma and what goes on in the temple. We'll let people go back to the Rambam because his codification was complete. So this is why we have other compilations claiming to be Jewish law unnecessarily when we already had Mishneh Torah. All right, any comments? Wade, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
Cool.